Hi guys, this is Tech Howdy. I welcome you to another video tutorial on creating your ASP.NET Core application with Angular 7. In the last video tutorial, we finished coding our SendGrid email sender class, which is basically the service that contains the logic for us to send emails to our newly registered users. The send email async method will be called every time we want to send an email to our users, and all we are going to do is provide the user email, the email subject, and the message of the email when we are calling this method. Since we would be using this method in other classes, especially in the account controller class when we are sending emails, we need to make sure that instead of accessing this class directly, we make use of an interface to access this class. Using an interface to access classes is a design pattern which is known as factory design pattern. We will create a factory class that will help us to access our send email sender class. So let's create our factory class, which is the interface inside. It's not a class, it's an interface that we will create basically inside the email folder. And let's go ahead and add a new file, and let's call this as email sender. So we're going to choose an empty class and we will call this as I email sender. So it's going to be an interface that we are going to use for this class. So let's create this class. Let's change this class to interface and just remove this constructor. We don't need it. Now here we want to call our send email async method, which will send emails to users with the given information. So I have added the parameters here now, and let's add the missing reference for our threading, and this should be it for our interface. So our interface is created, but for our interface to access this method from this class here, we need to make sure that we extended this class to our interface. So let's extend this to I email sender, and by doing this, now our I email sender, which is the interface email sender, will have access to a send email async method. Now our interface has been created. Now the way we are going to use this interface in ASP.NET Core is through dependency injection. If you have watched all the previous video tutorials, when we created a class, for example, inside the account controller class, so in controller, we have the account controller class, and now whenever we wanted to use our identity user inside this class using dependency injection, the first thing that we did was we added this inside the pipeline of our class. So here we have identity user, which is added inside the pipeline of our class. So then we can use it through dependency injection inside our classes. So in order to use this interface, email sender, we are going to do the same thing. We are going to make sure we add it to the pipeline so that we can use it in our account controller class. Let me just close this. Don't need this. Files open. So yep. So now let's go ahead and add our reference to our interface inside the startup. So whenever the application runs, this service is executed and it's available to be injected in whichever class that is requesting our send email sender service. So to implement or to inject the service inside this pipeline, we will create an extension class and we will add the method inside this extension class and then call it inside our startup class. I know it's a bit confusing, but you will understand it as we proceed. So first thing, because I spelled it wrong, so SendGrid extensions and then I'm going to create it. And now what we want to do is we don't need the constructor, so let's get rid of it. All we need inside this SendGrid extension class is, since we are going to inject it inside our configure method, inside our startup class, it's configure services method, we need to make sure that we are doing it through our iService collection, that is interface service collection object type. Therefore, the service is going to be of type interface service collection. So inside our extension method, we want to make sure that the method that we are creating also creates a service of type iService collection. So let's create a public method. It's a static method, so we don't need to create an object of this method. We can directly access it by calling SendGrid extensions dot iService collection dot the method name. So the method type will be iService collection because it's a service. And let's add the missing reference, which is Microsoft extension dependency injection, and the method name will be add SendGrid email sender. So what we're adding the service to send emails. And then what we are doing here is this iService collection object, and call this object as services. It's the same procedure that we see inside the startup class when we are creating a service object and then injecting it inside the pipeline. So instead of doing it here inside this configure services method, we created an extension method which is responsible to do that for our email service. So here now what we want to do is, using our services object, we will call the add transient, and we will create our email sender interface, add it, and then the send email sender. So send, we don't have it here, so our service which we want to inject is the send email sender. So this is the service which contains our async method. So SendGrid email sender inside here, and this is the interface that we use to access that method. Remember, that's why we have to add that interface and then the class. Now let's add the missing reference. Now what is this add transient object or the property? Every time you want to send an email to a user, we will create a new copy of this service. So if the service is already running and another user logs in and he creates an account, then a new service will be created, a new copy of this service will be created to send email to that new user. So every time a user is registering and every time we want to send an email to that specific user, we will create a new instance, a new copy of this service so that we can use it to send the email. There is also another option called as add singleton, which means that once the instance somebody logs in your application, let's say, and he registers and we want to send an email, so this service will be created once and the same service will be used. But in our case, we cannot use it for email sender, so we are using add transient, where every time we want to send the email, we will create a new instance or new copy of this add SendGrid email sender service. Okay, so make sure that we use add transient, not singleton here. So let's return, what we want to return is this service. So now we have created this extension method here, and now we can use this extension method inside our startup class. And this should be static because we have a static member here. So I forgot to add the static keyword there. So now a static class will have a static method, and this error should now be gone. So we can save this, and now we will inject this method or this service that we just created inside our startup. So you can directly insert it here and write the logic, but I decided to create an extension method so that we can keep all the email related classes and services inside one folder, which is email. So it's totally up to you how you want to code this. You can once again put it here, or you can create an extension method like I did here, and I put it inside this extension method. Now all we want to do is to inject this inside the pipeline. We will call services object, which is here, services dot the method name from our extension, which is add SendGrid email sender. And where's my startup class? That should be it. Add the missing reference. So once we add that missing reference, we should not see any errors. So we have now added this service inside the pipeline. So what's the next thing that we want to do? So next we want to add a view for our email, which means that when our user will receive the email will contain a confirmation link, and the user is going to click on that confirmation link. Once the confirmation link is clicked, the user will be redirected to a page. Now that page should say that your user registration is confirmed. So like a message that is displayed on the screen saying that, oh, your information or your email is now confirmed and now you can log into the application. So we need to create that view. So we will not use Angular for that. We will instead use our regular ASP.NET Core controller and view. And the way we will do that is first create a new controller for that, and go to ASP.NET Core. Let's call this as an MVC controller. Let's call this controller as notifications controller. Any views related to notifications, we can add them here inside this notifications controller. So I've called this notifications controller. You can name this anything you like. So I'm going to create a new controller. Now there is a default index action method, and I don't want this method, so I'm going to get rid of this, which is returning the index view. So now the notification controller, what I want to do is I want to notify the user if his email is confirmed or no. So let's create a action result. Let's call this method as email confirmed. Now in order to confirm the email on that page, we need to show the user ID that, hey user, with that ID your email has been confirmed. So when any class is calling this view, they need to provide the user ID of that user and the string code. So our email will contain the user ID and the code, the confirmation code that we need. Now first thing what we do when this method is called, we want to return the view. So let's do that. And the next thing is, please note that when we create this view, well, actually let's first create the view so I can demonstrate to you what exactly is happening. So let's go ahead and inside the views folder, we don't have a views folder for our ASP.NET Core yet because we are using our client app for managing the views. So we don't have an views folder yet because we are not using any ASP.NET Core views in our application. Therefore, we have not yet created it. So let's go ahead and create a views folder. So let's add a new folder. Call this as views. This folder needs to be called as views. You cannot call this anything else. That's how the naming convention of folders work for views in ASP.NET Core. Now the views will contain our views. So let's create a new folder for our notification controller view. So notifications So this is the name of a controller, correct? Notifications. You don't need to add controller. You just have to add the controller name, which is notifications. So the view folder name will be the same. Inside that folder, now we are going to add a new CSHTML file, which is basically the file which will contain the UI, the view of the email confirmation page. So let's go and search for a CSHTML page. So where is it? This is a Razor page. There's two options here, with model and without the model. So the one I am interested is without the model. So I'm just going to select Razor page, call this as, this is the same as the action method name, which is email confirm. This should be it. So let's add this. And here we will add the view. So for now, let's just add a h2 tag here, and let's say email confirm. Next thing that we want to do, our views will not load because we don't have a layout page. And in ASP.NET Core, for an MVC controller, we need to have a layout page, and we need to have a shared folder which contains that layout page. We also need to have a view start.chtml file, CSHTML file. So let's go ahead and add those inside the views folder. So right click, add new file, and we have to add our view start page. It's always called as view start. You can't change this name. So when you click on it, it will automatically add the name. All you have to do is click new, and then let's also create our shared folder. Let's rename this. A shared folder will contain all partial views and all the layout, common layout pages and so on. So let's create this folder shared, and inside the shared folder I'm going to add a new file. This is my layout page. So how the layout of my MVC pages will be, the common layout, we can add the common layout inside the underscore layout partial view file. So add new, and here inside this, since for our view, which is the confirmation email, I'm also going to use Bootstrap. So let's, and to use Bootstrap, I need to add the references for the Bootstrap libraries. So I'm going to add that here. So let's do that. To save time, I have already written the code for adding the required Bootstrap and CSS libraries that we need to implement or to use it in our UI. So I have added this, and I'm using the CD and links. And there's one important thing that I have added, which is the custom CSS file, which will be inside the custom folder inside the root of our application. So let's go ahead and add that folder, rename and call this custom. All this code and all these files will be available to download from the DevOps repos. So please do not worry, the link would be added in the video description. So just pay attention to the videos because you will get all these files and the codes. So I'm calling this the custom folder, and inside the custom folder I'm going to add a CSS file which will contain all the custom CSS code that we are going to use inside our MVC controller views. So new file, and I'm looking for a style sheet, so it should be under web and style sheet, and let's just call this as notification. That should be it, and that's it. So I'll replace this code here with my custom code that I wrote for our notification view of the email confirmation page, and I've imported two fonts from Google so that I can use them in that page. This code once again will be available in the DevOps repos. So let's save all my files first. Let's close this notification CSS, view start. We can just go now and build our application. But just before we build, let me just also update the email confirm page itself with the code, since we have already updated the CSS. And this code once again will be available in the DevOps repo, so you can download it. It's just a card that I have created, bootstrap card, that contains the email confirmed h2 tag, and the user ID of the user will be displayed. But at the moment we are just checking if this page can be accessed. So first thing that we want to do is stop our application and then go and build it, so that a newly created controller and newly created views can also be rendered. So build was successful. Now let's go ahead and run this application in the browser. Close the old window. So application is loading. To access the notifications controller, we will call the notifications controller. That's the controller's name, notification, and the action method name, which is email confirmed. Let's hit enter. And now, as you see, this is how the email confirmation page will look to our users, and they will be able to see this whenever they click on the registration link, confirmation email link in their email. So they will be redirected to this page. Now, if I go back to my application's homepage, I'm not yet registered and I'm not yet logged in. So I can still go and access the notifications controllers action method, this email confirm method, which I should be able to. Only users with the link can or should be able to access this. So therefore we need to add a condition in our action method for notifications controller here. So all we are doing is we are going to add a condition, which is if the user ID or the code which the user will receive in his email, the link basically that is generated and sent to the user, which is encrypted, contains the user ID and the code. So if anybody who's trying to access the email confirm page without the user ID and the code, that's what we have put here in condition. If the string user ID is null or white space, which means it's empty, we will redirect that specific user to the login page. If the user is trying to access the page with the user ID and the code, then we will return the view. So let's go back to our application. Actually, we need to again build this. So let's build this. So these changes are applied. Let's copy this link. I'm not going to close this window, just to show you. If I try to access the page now we are running the application. So if we try to access the page now, we wouldn't be able to access it because I am not accessing the page by clicking on the link that I have received in the email. So let's go ahead and try to access the page with the link. As you see, guys, I'm being redirected to login page. So if somebody who does not have the link which contains the user ID and the code and tries to access the email confirmation page or the view, they wouldn't be able to access it. So if I refresh this, as you see, I'm going to be redirected to login. So that should be it for this video tutorial. In the next video tutorial, what we will learn is we will learn to use our email service inside the registration method, so that every time a user registers, we can send them a confirmation email. And we had not written or coded that feature here. We are going to do it now in the next video tutorial. So please like and subscribe my channel Tech Howdy. Thank you once again.